Welcome back, everybody, to Deep Dive. Today we're going to be looking at Blake Crouch's Dark Matter
Oh, yeah.
and specifically looking at how it explores the many worlds interpretation,
Okay.
which is, this idea that every quantum measurement causes the universe to split,
Right.
creating alternate timelines where all possible outcomes occur.
Yeah.
So we're going to be diving into some pretty mind-bending questions today, so strap in.
All right. I'm strapped in. Let's do it.
All right. So Dark Matter introduces us to Jason Dessen, who is, he's this physics professor living a pretty normal life until he gets abducted and thrust into an alternate reality.
Yeah. So Jason Dessen, he's in Chicago. He's a physics professor. He's got a wife, Daniela, son, Charlie. And it's a good life. It's a pretty normal life. He's got some regrets. You get that sense that, maybe there were paths not taken, but he seems relatively content.
Yeah, and it's interesting how Crouch, right from the get-go, he kind of hints at those paths not taken in those first couple chapters.
Right. And then, boom, everything changes. Chapters 1 and 2, we're in Jason's world. We're getting to know him, and then he's abducted. He's injected with something. He wakes up in this high-tech lab, and everyone's telling him that he's the one who designed it.
Oh, wow.
He's supposed to be this amazing scientist who's cracked the mystery of the multiverse. And he's like, wait a minute, this is not my life.
That's so crazy. So in this new reality, then, he's living the life that he maybe could have had if he had made different choices.
Exactly. And in chapter 3, he meets this other version of Daniela who's not warm and loving like the Daniela he knows. She's kind of cold and distant. And she confirms, like, yeah, you're this world-famous physicist. You developed interdimensional travel. And that other life you remember, that's just a delusion.
Oh, man, I would be freaking out at this point.
Right. Total identity crisis.
Yeah. So how does Crouch explain this whole idea of traveling between dimensions?
Well, that's where the science fiction kicks in. Chapters 4 and 5 introduce us to this concept of superposition, which is the ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously. And Jason learns that by silencing certain regions of the brain, you can actually achieve this state of superposition. And that enables you to access the corridor.
The corridor. Yeah, it's such a vivid image. I remember when I was reading it, just trying to picture this.
Right. It's this endless hallway lined with countless doors. Each door represents a different reality. It's like a visual representation of the many worlds interpretation.
So each door is like a potential path, a different outcome based on choices made or not made.
Exactly. And opening a door signifies what they call decoherence, which is collapsing that wave function and choosing one specific reality to experience.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really crazy. Jason learns that his thoughts and his emotions can actually influence which reality he accesses through the corridor.
Oh, wow. So it's not just random chance. There's an element of his consciousness actually shaping the reality.
Yeah, exactly. And we see this play out in chapters 6 and 7. He's so desperate to get back to his original life that he stumbles into all these increasingly dark and dangerous realities.
It's like his negative emotions are manifesting negative outcomes.
Right. And then, just as he's starting to wrap his head around this whole thing in chapter 8, he stumbles into a reality where he encounters another version of himself. A Jason who seems to understand the rules of this multiverse game.
Okay, so now we're getting into this concept of branching.
Right. The idea that every decision creates a split in the timeline.
And leading to, countless versions of Jason.
Exactly. And in chapters 9 and 10, the tension just ramps up as he grapples with this concept. He's not just dealing with different realities now, he's encountering different versions of himself, each one shaped by their own choices.
Oh, wow. That makes you really question, what does it even mean to be you if there are all these versions of you out there?
Right. It's like a fundamental identity crisis. And as he goes deeper, he realizes the stakes are much higher than he ever imagined.
Yeah, this is getting really intense. So we're going to pause here for now, but when we come back, we're going to pick up the story and see what happens as Jason continues his journey through the multiverse.
I can't wait. Welcome back. So we left off with Jason meeting another version of himself, right? Like face to face with another Jason.
Yeah, and it's like looking in a mirror.
Yeah.
But the reflection is warped a little bit because this other Jason has made different choices.
Exactly. And in chapters 11 and 12, this other Jason, let's call him Jason 2, he tells Jason about this device that can actually track the branching timelines, like a map of the multiverse.
Yeah.
But Jason 2, he warns him. He says, the more you travel through the corridor, the harder it becomes to find your way back.
So it's not just about finding a world where Daniela and Charlie exist. It's about finding the right Daniela,
Yeah.
the one from his original reality.
Exactly, and that becomes Jason's obsession. Chapters 13 and 14, he's going through all these different realities, encountering all these different versions of Daniela. Some are artists, some are politicians, there's even one who's passed away, and every encounter just reminds him of what he's lost.
Yeah, like each wrong Daniela makes the right one even more precious.
Right. And then in chapter 15, there's a shift. He realizes that just searching for Daniela isn't enough.
Yeah.
He needs to understand the source of the branching.
Like the root of the problem, not just the symptom.
Exactly. And that's where Jason 2 comes back into the picture. In chapters 16 and 17, we find out that Jason 2, driven by his ambition, he was the first one to activate this technology that really destabilized the multiverse.
So he's like the patient zero of the branching.
Right. He sees himself as a pioneer, but Jason sees him as the one who started this whole mess.
It's interesting how Crouch, he doesn't paint Jason 2 as this, like, evil villain.
Right.
He's complex. He's got his own motivations.
Totally. And their clashing perspectives lead to these confrontations in chapters 18 and 19. Jason tries to reason with him, appeals to their shared love for Daniela, but Jason 2 is just too invested in this creation, this control he has over the branching timelines.
So it becomes like a philosophical battle over the nature of reality.
Exactly. And the battle comes to a head in chapters 20 and 21. Jason realizes the only way to stop the branching is to go back to the very first split, the moment when Jason 2 activated the machine.
So he's talking about, like, rewriting history, but wouldn't that have massive consequences?
Huge consequences, potentially wiping out entire timelines.
Yeah.
In chapters 22 and 23, you really see him wrestling with the moral implications of that. He knows there are countless versions of himself, of Daniela, of Charlie, all living their own lives. Can he justify sacrificing some to save others?
That's a heavy question.
It is. And as the book races towards its conclusion, Jason makes a choice.
What does he do?
He makes a sacrifice to collapse the branching timelines.
Okay, so he achieves his goal. But does he make it back to his Daniela, his Charlie?
Well, that's where Crouch leaves us with this beautifully ambiguous ending, chapters 24 and 25. Jason finds himself in a reality with Daniela and Charlie. A life that feels familiar, but subtly different. He can't be certain if it's truly his original reality or another variation, but he chooses to embrace the love and connection he finds there.
So even with all this mind-bending multiverse stuff, the message is about the power of love and connection.
Exactly. It's what makes Dark Matter so powerful. It's a thriller, yes. But it's a story that really stays with you. It makes you question your own choices, your own reality.
It really does. So we're going to leave it there for now.
Yeah.
But when we come back, we'll delve into the ending a bit more and talk about some of the bigger questions that Dark Matter raises.
Sounds good. Welcome back to the deep dive. So Jason's got this big decision to make, and the stakes are incredibly high.
He's about to rewrite reality as we know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chapters 26 and 27 are just nonstop action. Jason puts his plan into motion, goes back to that original split, and confronts Jason 2.
Right at the moment he activates the machine.
Exactly. It's this intense battle, not just physical, but also a battle of wills.
Because he's trying to convince him to shut the whole thing down, right?
Yeah, he wants Jason 2 to see reason, to understand the consequences of what he's unleashed. But Jason 2, he's convinced he's doing the right thing, He sees himself as opening up these infinite possibilities.
Right. It's that classic conflict between control and exploration versus stability and connection.
Exactly. And in chapter 28, things get really crazy. There's this huge surge of energy from the machine, and it looks like it's going to cause even more branching.
So everything's spiraling out of control.
Yeah, and that's when Jason realizes there's only one way to stop it. He has to merge with Jason to collapse their timelines into one.
So he's talking about sacrifice.
Yeah, a huge sacrifice. He's going to lose himself in order to save everyone else.
Wow.
And in chapters 29 and 30, that's exactly what happens. He merges with Jason 2, and it stops the branching. But he disappears in the process.
So he saves the multiverse, but what about him? Did he ever find his way back to Daniela and Charlie?
Well, the ending is a little bit open-ended. In chapters 31 and 32, he finds himself back in a world with Daniela and Charlie. Things seem familiar, but a little off.
So he can't be sure if it's really his original timeline.
Right, but he chooses to believe it is. He embraces the love and the family he has.
I think that's a really powerful message. Even with all this multiverse stuff, it comes down to the importance of human connection.
Yeah, Dark Matter takes us on this wild ride through different realities. But ultimately, it's a story about the choices we make, the people we love, and the meaning we find in our lives.
I think that's a great place to leave it.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Dark Matter. It's a book that makes you think and maybe even question your own reality. And we hope you enjoyed exploring it with us.